Welcome to today's deep dive into one of the most shocking scandals ever to shake the world of 90 Day Fiancé. This isn't just reality TV drama. It's a story that spiraled into betrayal, courtroom battles, and shattered lives. At the center of it all are Luc Bryan and Madelein Perez, a couple once celebrated for their whirlwind romance. Fans adored their chemistry, their laughter, and their promise are forever. But behind the cameras, behind the smiles, a storm was brewing. One that would change their lives forever. For 10 months, Madelein carried a secret. A secret affair with a wealthy banker named Thomas. What began as stolen moments soon grew into a full-fledged romance, fueled by promises of financial rescue and luxury escapes. Thomas wasn't just a lover. He became her savior, pledging to erase her crushing debt of $570,000. But secrets have a way of surfacing. And when medical tests revealed that Madelein was pregnant with Thomas' child, the fragile foundation of her marriage to Luc collapsed. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too raw. Heated arguments turned into divorce papers, and Luc's world spiraled into despair. Yet, the drama didn't end there. Luc accused Madelein of embezzling $450,000 of his savings, funneling it straight to Thomas. The courtroom became their new stage, and the verdict was damning. Madelein was guilty. Sentenced to 5 months in prison, her fall from grace was complete. But Luc, he chose survival. He chose to rise again. And now he's ready to marry once more. Determined to rebuild the life that betrayal tried to destroy. This is not just a love story gone wrong. It's a saga of secrets, lies, and redemption. A tale that proves reality TV can sometimes be far more real and far more devastating than anyone could imagine. So sit back, because over the next 12 chapters, we'll unravel the shocking journey of Luc Bryan and Madelein Perez. From fairy tale beginnings to courtroom endings, this is a story you won't forget. When Luc Bryan first appeared on 90 Day Fiancé, audiences were captivated by his charm. He was the kind of man who seemed to embody the dream. Confident, romantic, and ready to build a life with the woman he loved. That woman was Madelein Perez, a striking beauty with a magnetic presence. Together, they seemed unstoppable. Their romance was painted in golden hues, candlelit dinners, vacations that looked like postcards, and endless declarations of love. Fans followed their journey with admiration, believing they were witnessing a couple destined for forever. Luc often spoke about how Madelein was his anchor, the one who gave meaning to his chaotic world. Madelein too played her role perfectly. She smiled for the cameras, whispered promises of loyalty, and embraced the image of a devoted partner. To outsiders, theirs was a fairy tale, the kind of love story reality TV thrives on. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Luc's trust was absolute, but Madelein carried secrets she dared not reveal. Financial troubles weighed heavily on her, debts that threatened to consume her future. Yet she kept silent, unwilling to tarnish the perfect image they had built together. Still, in those early days, Luc and Madelein were the picture of happiness. Their chemistry was undeniable, their laughter infectious. They became fan favorites, the couple everyone rooted for. Luc's devotion seemed unshakable, and Madelein's charm kept viewers enchanted. What no one knew, not even Luc, was that this fairy tale was already unraveling. Behind the smiles and the scripted romance, Madelein's heart was wandering. And soon she would meet someone who promised her not just love, but salvation. The glamorous beginning was only the prologue. The real story, the scandal, the betrayal, the heartbreak was waiting just around the corner. Every fairy tale has its shadows. And for Luc Bryan and Madelein Perez, those shadows began to take shape when Madelein crossed paths with Thomas, a charismatic banker with a reputation for wealth and influence. Their meeting was not accidental. It happened in the quiet corners of a luxury networking event where Thomas' polished charm and Madelein's vulnerability collided in a way that neither could ignore. Madelein was carrying a burden she had never confessed to Luc, a mountain of debt that threatened to consume her future. The figure was staggering, $570,000. It was a secret she guarded fiercely, terrified that revealing it would shatter the perfect image she had built with Luke. But Thomas, with his calculating eyes and soothing words, saw through her facade. He recognized her desperation, and in that moment he became more than just a stranger. He became her escape. Their conversations began innocently enough. A coffee here, a dinner there. But beneath the surface, a dangerous intimacy was forming. Thomas listened when Luke didn't know there was anything to hear. He offered solutions when Madelein believed there were none. And slowly, she began to trust him with the truths she had hidden from everyone else. The secrecy of their meetings added fuel to the fire. 5-star hotels became their sanctuaries, places where Madelein could shed the weight of her marriage and embrace the thrill of forbidden love. Each rendezvous deepened their connection, weaving a web of passion and deceit that grew stronger with every passing week. Madelein's heart was torn. On one side was Luke, the man she had promised forever to, the man who believed in her without question. On the other was Thomas, the man who offered not just romance but salvation, a chance to erase her debt and start anew. The choice was not yet made, but the scales were tipping. For 10 months, this secret affair thrived in the shadows. Luke remained blissfully unaware, living in the glow of a marriage he believed was unshakable. Meanwhile, Madelein was building a second life, one filled with whispered promises and hidden rendezvous. The cracks in the fairy tale were widening, and soon the truth would erupt in a way that no one, not Luke, not Madelein, not even Thomas, could have predicted. Madeleine Perez's life had always looked glamorous from the outside. To fans of 90 Day Fiancé, she was the woman who seemed to have it all: beauty, charm, and a husband who adored her. But behind the curtain, she was drowning. The weight of her $570,000 debt was a secret she carried like a stone tied to her heart. Every smile she gave Luke, every promise she whispered was shadowed by the fear that one day her financial ruin would be exposed. When Thomas entered her life, he didn't just bring romance, he brought relief. He was a banker, a man who understood numbers, risk, and the crushing reality of debt. In their private conversations, Madeleine finally confessed the truth she had hidden from Luke. She spoke of sleepless nights, of creditors circling, of the shame that gnawed at her. And Thomas, with his calm authority, made her a promise that would change everything. "I'll take care of it. I'll pay it all off." That vow was more than financial. It was emotional. It was intoxicating. For Madeleine, Thomas became more than a lover. He became her savior. The idea that someone could erase her past mistakes, wipe away the fear, and give her a clean slate was irresistible. And with every whispered assurance, her loyalty to Thomas deepened. Their relationship grew stronger in the glow of this promise. 5-star hotels became their playground, places where they celebrated not just their passion, but the future Thomas was building for her. Each night together was a reminder that she was no longer alone in her struggles. Thomas wasn't just offering her love. He was offering her freedom. Meanwhile, Luke remained oblivious. He believed he was the center of Madeleine's world, never suspecting that another man was rewriting her destiny. He continued to shower her with affection, unaware that her heart was drifting further away with each passing day. The $570,000 debt was more than numbers on paper. It was the chain that bound Madeleine to Thomas. It was the reason she answered his calls, the reason she met him in secret, the reason she began to imagine a life without Luke. Desire and desperation had fused together, creating a bond that was nearly impossible to break. But promises, no matter how grand, come with consequences. And soon, the price of Thomas's vow would ripple through all their lives, setting the stage for revelations that would shatter everything Luke thought he knew about love, loyalty, and trust. Luxury has a way of disguising secrets. For Madame Perez and Thomas, 5-star hotels became more than just places of indulgence. They were sanctuaries where their forbidden romance could flourish, hidden from the eyes of the world. Behind the polished marble floors and velvet drapes, they built a second life, one that existed only in whispers and stolen moments. Each rendezvous carried the thrill of danger. Madelein would arrive with her heart pounding, knowing that every step she took into Thomas' arms was a step further away from Luc Bry. Yet, the alia was irresistible. Thomas knew how to make her feel safe, desired, and free from the crushing weight of her debt. In those hotel suites, she wasn't the wife burdened by secrets. She was the woman Thomas adored, the woman he promised to rescue. The nights were extravagant. Champagne flowed, candlelight flickered, and conversations stretched into the early hours. They spoke of dreams of futures, of a life where Madelein would no longer have to hide. Thomas' promise to erase her $570,000 debt was not just financial security. It was the foundation of the world they were building together. Every night spent in luxury reinforced the bond between them, making it harder for Madelein to imagine returning to the life she had with Luc. But secrecy has a cost. Each time Madelein slipped away, she had to invent excuses, stories that would keep Luc from suspecting the truth. She became skilled at deception, weaving lies with the same ease she once spoke of love. Luc, blinded by trust, never questioned her absences. He believed in her loyalty, never imagining that his wife was living a double life. For Thomas, the affair was more than passion. It was conquest. He relished the secrecy, the thrill of knowing he had won Madelein's heart, while Luc remained in the dark. The five-star hotels were not just escapes. They were trophies, symbols of the life he was offering her. As the months passed, the affair grew deeper, more dangerous. Madelein's emotions were tangled in a web of desire and guilt. She knew the truth would eventually surface. But in those nights of luxury, she chose to forget. She chose to live in the moment, to embrace the love that felt more real than the marriage she had once cherished. The five-star nights were intoxicating, but they were also a ticking time bomb. Every secret rendezvous brought them closer to exposure, closer to the moment when Luc would discover the betrayal that had been unfolding behind closed doors. And when that moment came, the fallout would be devastating. For months, Madeleine Paris had lived in two worlds. In one, she was Luc Bry's wife, adored, admired, and trusted without question. In the other, she was Thomas's secret lover, bound to him not only by passion, but by the promise of financial salvation. But fate has a way of exposing secrets, and it did so in the most undeniable way possible, a pregnancy. At first, Madeleine tried to convince herself that the child could be Luc's. It was easier, safer, less destructive. But deep down, she knew the truth. The timing, the intimacy, the nights spent in five-star hotels with Thomas. All of it pointed to one conclusion. Still, she hung to hope until the medical tests arrived. The results were irrefutable. The DNA confirmed what Madeleine feared and Thomas anticipated. The baby was his. The affair was no longer just whispers in the dark or champagne soap nights of passion. It had created life, a living testament to their secret bond. For Thomas, the revelation was exhilarating. He saw it as proof of their destiny, a sign that Madeleine was meant to be his. He spoke of marriage, of building a family, of a future where she would never again have to hide. His confidence was intoxicating, and for a moment, Madeleine allowed herself to believe in the dream. But for Luc, the truth was devastating. When he learned of the pregnancy, his world shattered. The betrayal was no longer abstract. It was flesh and blood. Undeniable evidence that the woman he loved had chosen another man. His trust, his devotion, his belief in their marriage. All of it collapsed in an instant. The arguments that followed were explosive. Luc demanded answers, his voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. Madeleine, cornered by the truth, could no longer deny what had happened. She admitted the affair, admitted the debt, admitted that Thomas had become more than just a lover. The confession was a knife to Luc's heart, cutting deeper than any betrayal he had ever imagined. The pregnancy became the turning point. It was the moment when the fairy tale ended and the nightmare began. Luc's anguish grew unbearable and Madeleine's resolve hardened. She no longer saw herself as Luc's wife. She saw herself as Thomas's future bride, the mother of his child. DNA doesn't lie. And in this case, it told a story of betrayal, passion, and a love triangle that could no longer remain hidden. The revelation set the stage for the collapse of a marriage and the eruption of a scandal that would soon spill into the public eye. For Luc Bry, the revelation of Madelein Perez's pregnancy was more than just shocking. It was soul-crushing. The man who had once believed in everlasting love now found himself staring at the ruins of his marriage. The DNA test had stripped away every illusion, leaving him with the undeniable truth. The child his wife carried belonged to another man. The betrayal hit Luc like a tidal wave. He replayed every moment of their relationship in his mind. The laughter, the promises, the tender nights, and each memory now felt poisoned. How long had she been lying? How many times had she smiled at him while secretly planning her future with Thomas? The questions tormented him, gnawing at his sanity. Arguments erupted daily. Luc's voice, once filled with affection, now trembled with rage and despair. He demanded explanations, but Madeline's answers only deepened the wound. She admitted the affair, admitted the debt, admitted that Thomas had become her savior. Her words were daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. Luc's breaking point came not in a single moment, but in a series of small devastations. The sight of Madeleine texting late at night. The memory of her absences now explained by five-star rendezvous. The realization that while he had been planning their future, she had been planning her escape. The emotional toll was unbearable. Luc's health began to deteriorate. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and withdrew from the world. Friends noticed the change, but Luc was too consumed by grief to accept their help. His heartbreak was not just emotional. It was physical, a weight pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. Madeleine, meanwhile, grew colder. Her resolve hardened with each passing day. She no longer saw herself as Luc's wife. She saw herself as Thomas's future bride. Her declaration was chilling. "I only want to marry Thomas." Those words echoed in Luc's mind, a cruel reminder that the woman he loved had chosen another man. The breaking point was inevitable. Luc's despair spiraled into darkness, pushing him toward thoughts he had never imagined. The betrayal had not only destroyed his marriage, it had shattered his will to live. This chapter of their story was not about love or passion. It was about devastation, about the collapse of trust, and about a man pushed to the edge by the woman he thought would stand by him forever. Luc Bry's breaking point was the moment the fairy tale ended completely, and what followed would plunge their lives into even deeper chaos. The breaking point had already been reached. Luc Bry's world was collapsing under the weight of betrayal, and Madeleine Perez had made her intentions brutally clear. "I only want to marry Thomas." Those words were not just a declaration. They were a death sentence for their marriage. The days that followed were filled with tension so thick it was suffocating. Luc tried desperately to salvage what remained, pleading with Madeleine to reconsider, to remember the love they once shared. But her heart had already crossed the line. She no longer saw herself as Luc's wife. She saw herself as Thomas's future bride, the mother of his child, and the woman who would finally escape the crushing debt that had haunted her for years. The divorce papers arrived like a final blow, cold, clinical, and undeniable. For Luc, holding those documents in his hands was like holding the ashes of his marriage. Every signature, every line of legal jargon was a reminder that the woman he had trusted above all else had chosen another man. Madeleine's resolve was unwavering. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. To her, the divorce was not an ending, but a beginning. The first step toward a new life with Thomas. She envisioned a future of luxury, security, and freedom. A life where her past mistakes would be erased by Thomas's wealth and devotion. Luc, however, was consumed by grief. The divorce was more than paperwork. It was the destruction of his identity. He had built his life around Madeleine, believing she was his partner, his anchor, his forever. Now that foundation had crumbled, leaving him adrift in a sea of despair. Friends and family watched helplessly as Luke unraveled. His once vibrant spirit dimmed, replaced by anger, sorrow, and a haunting emptiness. The man who had once been celebrated on 90 Day Fiancé was now a shadow of himself. Broken by the betrayal of the woman he loved. Madeline's choice was final. She walked away from Luke without looking back. Her eyes fixed on Thomas and the promise of a new life. The divorce was not just the end of a marriage. It was the public declaration that she had chosen her lover over her husband, her secret over her vows. The fairy tale romance that fans had once adored was officially over. And for Luke Bry, the divorce marked the beginning of a descent into darkness that would soon lead him to the most desperate act of his life. The collapse of Luke Bry's marriage had already left him shattered. The divorce papers were signed, the pregnancy confirmed, and Madeleine Perez's declaration, "I only want to marry Thomas," echoed endlessly in his mind. For Luke, the betrayal was not just emotional, it was existential. The life he had built, the love he had trusted, had been torn away in the most brutal fashion. In the weeks that followed, Luke spiraled into despair. Friends noticed the change immediately. His once vibrant energy was gone, replaced by silence and isolation. He stopped attending social gatherings, stopped answering calls, and withdrew into himself. The man who had once been celebrated on 90 Day Fiancé was now a shadow consumed by grief. The weight of betrayal pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket. Every memory of Madeleine, her laughter, her promises, her touch now felt poisoned. He replayed their past